Hi, and welcome to the wrongest of ways. And in many of my videos, I stress the importance of a smart BMS in our electric unicycles. But why is it like that in the end? And why is a smart BMS so important? So in today's video, I'm going to tell you what a smart BMS is, what are the essential and important functions to a battery management system. And it is very important. And it's so important that I put on one of my only shirts that I own for this important situation. But yeah, underneath I'm still wearing shorts. So the term Smart BMS stands for Smart Battery Management System. So a system that ensures that your battery in your electric device is safe to use, and in case of any sort of deterioration of your battery pack or malfunction, it will notify you that something is going wrong and you need to repair it. And it should minimize the risk of damaging it. So what we essentially have inside those electric unicycles are small 21700 battery cells, and the battery pack is arranged into series and parallels. If you have many of those cells in such a battery pack, you need to ensure that they are all working in their optimal conditions. So all of those battery cells should have a similar voltage and should be drained, discharged at a similar level. So therefore, there's a couple of basic functions in the battery management system that ensures that the battery pack is safe. So let me go through those one by one, because it's very convoluted, and sometimes advertisers will say, oh, it's an intelligent BMS, but actually it's not a smart BMS. It's a dumb BMS called intelligent BMS. Or they will tell you that they have various protection systems, which are great, but they're not the actual feature that you're looking for. So let's start with number one. So number one, the battery management system should include active cell balancing. What does that mean? Well, first of all, there is the lowest stage of battery management system and cell balancing, which is no cell balancing. So if you don't have cell balancing, then it means that over time the battery will just get disbalanced. You won't be able to reach the maximum capacity of the battery pack. Now the second level to this is passive cell balancing. So when you have passive cell balancing, you charge the EUC every 4 to 5 rides to 100%. And once it's completed its charging and the light on the charger turns green, you leave it on for about an hour, and then the very basic battery management system ensures that the battery cells, all of them, reach their maximum top voltage. Now the most advanced balancing system that you can get is a active cell balancing. And we already have that both in the Veteran Lynx and in the Bigode ET Max. But when you have a EUC with active cell balancing, this means that you don't even need to leave it at the charger to ensure that the battery pack is balancing properly. So this is what we need in all of our EUCs. Now, in our Lynx and ET Max, it is still doing it every once in a while. You can't just press a button and balance it, or say that, it should balance under this and this circumstance. But it's working well enough to be, in my opinion, a safe, good solution in our EUCs. And this is the feature we should be striving for in all of our products: active cell balancing. The second aspect that is very important is safety to overcharge, overcurrent, too high temperature, and also short circuits. So a good BMS should include either MOSFETs or proper fuses that make sure that there won't be any short circuit in the battery, or the cells would blow or something else. There should be battery temperature sensors inside to make sure that it's not running too hot, and in cold climates that you're not charging it when it's too cold. It needs to make sure that the battery pack doesn't have a too high voltage and too low voltage, which might damage the cells. So in my opinion, all of the EUCs shouldn't charge to a maximum 4.2 volts, which is the maximum voltage of a cell, because then if you would break, you would slightly overcharge them, which does reduce the lifespan of a battery pretty significantly. Now I know those are just short bursts, but for the longest lifespan of a battery, I would suggest putting the max charge between 4.1 and 4.15 volts, like we have it pretty much here on the Bigode Extreme or on the InMotion V13. It is not crucial to charge it to 4.2, and especially if it balances before, then yeah, it shouldn't just overcharge by factory. And luckily, we're getting that more and more, and we're also getting the feature inside our apps to stop charging at a certain battery level. Now, it's important to combine that with the prior feature, active cell balancing, because if you charge your EUC to a certain level that has just passive cell balancing, after a while, the battery pack might get disbalanced. So remember, if the first feature, I know it's convoluted, is just passive cell balancing on a full charge, then it means you still need to charge the battery pack to 100% every 5 to 10 rides to make sure that the battery pack is working well. Now, the next feature, which is typically considered as being a smart BMS in our electric unicycle world, is monitoring the voltage of each series in the battery pack. So I can demonstrate it to you very simply by just turning on the veteran links and showing you the app. So here you can see the left battery pack, which is one side of the wheel, and the right battery pack. And you can notice that the maximum voltage of all of those combined is 150.2 volts. And then here you can see the individual cell series. So you can see the discrepancies, you can see the temperature, you can see the power output, and the max difference. And typically this max difference shouldn't be over 0.1 volts, maybe 0.15 max. So if this is, at around of 0.05 volts difference, there shouldn't be any cause for concern. So this is a monitoring function, which is really important. And it is especially important if there's some sort of cell inside of the battery pack that is broken or malfunctioning. Because once that happens, you don't want to ride your EUC because you can damage the battery pack even more. And then there are several circumstances where such a monitoring system is clearly safer and superior than a battery management system without this info. Let me explain. If you have just one battery pack and the cell is broken during the middle of the ride, there is no way of finding out if you don't have the system that it is broken. To make it a bit simpler, I drew a little picture. So here is the individual cell. Its operating voltage from sort of no state of charge to full charge is from 3 volts to 4.2 volts. And then in a EUC, we have, for example, 20 of them in series. So 20 times 3 volts, this is almost zero charge, is 60 volts here. And 20 times 4.2, which is full charge, is 84 volts. So this is the operating voltage. So then if you have a half of a charge, you just get 72 volts. And if suddenly you would have a dead cell, so you have one sort of series less that is operating, so minus 3.6 volts at that time, you still have a operating voltage which is within the confines of the motherboard. So theoretically and practically, when you have a wheel that doesn't notice those discrepancies, it will keep on riding even while using a dead cell in a battery pack. And that is very, very dangerous. And the only way to find out is that either you have a huge deficiency in power, it doesn't let you charge to the maximum battery level. So for example, if your EUC is 84 volts, and it charges just to 80, there's a high likelihood that there's one battery cell that is broken or the whole battery pack isn't balancing. And at this point, if one battery cell is broken, you should not ride the EUC under any circumstances. And because there is just one battery pack and the voltage range of the whole battery pack is just big, then you might just ride it and never know until you charge it to 100%. So in this scenario, it is pretty unsafe to use a EUC that doesn't have a smart BMS nor a second battery pack to compare it to check the voltage. Now, the second scenario, which is a bit better, which is in all EUCs that have separate battery packs. If one cell is broken, then one of the battery packs would have a significantly lower voltage than the other. And then the motherboard or the battery management system would say, haha, there is something wrong, you should stop. So having an EUC which has those packs separated is actually much safer than just having an EUC with one singular battery pack that doesn't have a smart BMS. And of course, the optimal scenario is to have a smart BMS and to have this monitoring function, because then You are just riding along, you check it every once in a while after you go out for a ride, and then you're like, okay, all is good, all right, all is good, finito. If it notices this huge discrepancy, which I believe is the case with this veteran Lynx, then it will just force you to stop. And this is how it should be, and this is why I push for this monitoring system a lot in my videos and reviews. Now, the fourth thing I wanted to talk about is the adjustability and advanced settings to all of those parameters. Now, what we have in our EUCs is like a movie. We just watch a movie, we see what happens, and you don't have any influence into the system except for the maximum charge level of the wheel, and in some instances the minimum charge level, like the low battery mode on the Leaper-Kim wheels. In the optimal situation, you would be able to set up all of the values, when it should start balancing, when should it charge to full. You could even like set it up, which days should it charge to full, when it should start ringing the alarm once it gets too hot, and other functions are just not yet available. So we do have all of the things that we want to see, for example, on the ET Max and on the, also on the InMotion V13, but we don't have yet all of the adjustability, which is available on pretty basic smart BMSs like, the Ant BMS that e-bikes use as well. And I almost have forgotten about it, but back in the day, Begode wheels used to not have any connection from the motherboard to the BMS. So there was no way of knowing anything about the battery pack other than disassembling it. So a basic connection from BMS to motherboard or from BMS to phone to check what's going on with the battery management system is a no-brainer, and of course should be in every EUC, and at this point it is. But in those older Begode wheels, no. You could just ride along and never know what's happening inside. Terrifying. Now, a smart BMS is great, but it doesn't mean that it is the most safest thing inside of an electric unicycle. Now, there were cases of a wheel with a smart BMS catching on fire, like the S22. If the battery cells, like the LGM50Ts, they are not the best quality, well, a smart BMS can tell you before that maybe something's about to happen, but it doesn't ensure 100% safety. Another issue, which is very crucial, is water ingress and even salt water. So it is very important for those battery packs to be properly sealed, to have the temperature sensors, and to be just safely built into the wheel, also in a mechanical way. Because I guess most of the cases where there might be a fire or something dangerous happening is especially water ingress, physical damage to the battery. It could be also just the metal connections. I know there's a professional term for it, but the metal connections between the batteries just frying, like it was on the V1 Masters, where the battery packs were arranged in different ways. The Smart BMS is a great addition and should be the basic function to all of the other EUCs, but it doesn't necessarily mean that if you have a EUC without a Smart BMS, that it's less safe than a EUC with a Smart BMS, but just all in all built worse. So what we should be striving for is not saying, well, it doesn't have a Smart BMS, but it's good enough. But we want to have the safety standard and the longevity of the battery pack on the highest possible grade. We want to have both the safety, the monitoring, the durability, the longevity of the battery pack, along with the physical safety, the protection against water ingress, good battery cells, properly stored battery cells, and shipped in a safe nominal voltage. So I know that this has been a lot, but hopefully this video has shed some light onto why a Smart BMS for me is so important. So put very shortly, the wrong way approved Smart BMS would be one with active cell balancing, all of the necessary sensors, temperature sensors, and fuses or MOSFETs, a safe electronics layout, a monitoring system where you can check all of the series and what's happening inside of the battery pack, and advanced adjustment options so you can personalize what you need inside of your battery pack, and most importantly, a safety system where the EUC won't allow you to ride if there's anything wrong with the battery pack. So I hope you can see through the marketing a bit more, and I hope you can see a bit more on what's important inside of those EUCs, because in most reviews you don't even hear about it. You don't know what the electronics inside are, and then you're like, well, it has, you know, intelligent BMS, or it has maybe like 3 or 4 safety points, and you're like, oh, okay, that's good enough. But more often than not, it's not, or it's tough to find out the exact information that you want to have. And with that said, I will actually be going back to reviewing wheels that don't have a Smart BMS, also because I feel like it's important to say what is inside a wheel, because if I don't do it, I was, you know, pressuring EUC manufacturers since a while with my ban on Smart BMS reviews in order to implement them. But they're still pretty slow with adopting that. But now I will review them, I'll say how they ride, and I'll also say what is the technology inside and whether it's safe or not to use on an everyday basis. So with that said, I hope you're still here. Leave a like on the video, subscribe to see more content like this. I'll see you in the next video. See you soon. So, come.